On the 10th day of Flipmas, Watchtower gave to me 10 Pharisees adding 9, boxes checking 8, saints a milking 7, halls a selling 666, dedication 5, golden apostasies. 4 publishers, 3 judicial hands, 2 witnesses, and part truth in an everlasting live tree. In the original song, The 12 Days of Christmas, that was rumored to be created as a covert way, think spy, to remember the tenets of Christianity.
Though now debunked.
Yeah, well, it ain't like we can do anything about it now, so, hey, is that new light at the end of the tunnel?
Yes.
But in the song, The 12 Days of Christmas, the 10 lords a-leaping were said to represent the 10 commandments. The Insight book says of the number 10,
10 is a number denoting fullness, entirety, the aggregate, the sum of all that exists of something. It may be noted also that where the numbers 7 and 10 are used together, the 7 represents that which is higher or superior, and 10 represents something of a subordinate nature.
As a whole, we as Christians know that we are no longer under the law, which included the 10 commandments, as we have the law of the Christ. So how is it that we again find ourselves enslaved to 10 laws?
Under the Insight book's definition of 10.
Right. So we have taken a sampling of a literal 10 to represent the complete figurative 10 ways that they enslave us under man's laws.
The first one, music choices.
To represent this one in a figurative way, but with a literal story, we'll tell the story of what happened to an individual that was living in our household. What had happened is we went to a get-together, and the brother that was staying with us, he had left his CD case there, and this elder's son had gotten a hold of it and was thumbing through it. So after a meeting, our next meeting, was a weekday meeting. I don't remember if it was a Tuesday or a Thursday because we were doing both at that time. They had pulled him into an elders meeting, which is usually, when you've got meeting getting over and then you've got an hour drive to get home after sitting there for a while and visiting, that can kind of drag on. So anyway, while we were on our way home, I kind of asked him, can I ask what that was all about? And he said, oh, nothing big. I just left my CD case over there. And there was some music in there that, I needed to throw away. And I'm like, I kind of know this guy. He's not like he's listening to 2 Live Crew or something. So I was like, well, what was in your case that you needed to throw away, if I might ask? And he says,
Linkin Park.
And I'm like, Linkin Park? And I'm like going through their songs in my mind. And I'm like, I can't. I'm like,
it's all over the radio.
Yeah, I'm like, Linkin Park. I'm like, so what was so bad about Linkin Park? Well, apparently they look up to Marilyn Manson for some of their inspiration. I'm like, what? They look up to Marilyn Manson for some of their inspiration? How did he know that? What kind of research does it take to figure that out? And I just said, you know what? Don't throw that away. I'm not telling you not to throw it away. But if you're going to throw it away because you want to throw it away, not because some elder who's stuffy and is researching things that are ridiculous because they want you to throw it away. Could you... Beatles, Elvis, can you imagine any of these individuals and going through every song that they ever had and who they might have looked to for inspiration on different things? It's just insane.
That's micromanaging. The second one is rated R movies.
Now, by no means are we advocating rated R movies, but a movie can get an R rating just by dropping a couple cuss words. And yet there are many G-rated movies centered around magic. Perhaps it's got immorality, violence, or any other things that are PG or PG-13 or even unrated movies may have any of those other things in them. Look at the principle of it. That's what a Christian's supposed to do, not go by checks and boxes of ratings that are done by worldly people anyway.
3 is dress.
Now, by dress, we don't mean literal dress, but like
Dressing.
clothes.
Yeah, what you're putting on your body.
Obviously, a Christian is supposed to be mindful of dressing modestly, and we get it. There are all sorts of stupid fashions, and if you ask me, tight pants is one of them.
I will say this. I do wear skinny jeans because it's easy to put boots on.
So all fashion has its point, I guess. But terrible Tony's serious all-out assault on them just makes him look like an unbalanced fanatic. It seems like it would be more beneficial to us if you held up some 70s picture of a poor sap in bell-bottoms and the big brown glasses, and then read 1 John 2:17, where it says that the world and its desire is passing away. In other words, it doesn't say is going to pass away. It says its desire is passing away. It becomes outdated. And then saying something like, hey, listen, you plan on living forever, right? Then hold up that picture of that 70s dude in the big glasses with the bell bottoms and say, do you want to look back for all eternity and see yourself immortalized like this poor sap?
But instead, they make gaslighting statements about how they don't make rules. And at the exact same time, they come out with a full color brochure with pictures. So you understand the rules of what we deem as acceptable and unacceptable.
One side acceptable, the other side unacceptable.
No.
But we don't tell you how to dress or nothing.
That's up to you. But we're going to judge you based on this.
And you know what? None of this would be any problem whatsoever if it weren't for them supporting the local Gestapo bales that may choose to at any time inconsistently judge you by them while they let somebody else slide and start the process of turning your life into a living hell.
The 4th is grooming.
Now, the scripture talks about fancy hair braiding.
You know, when was the last time a sister was pulled into the back room for her cornrows or weave extensions? You know, that took hours to do, 6 hours to do. Or the presiding overseer's wife, Mimi eyeshadow.
And we're not saying that any of them should be called into the back room.
No.
But why should it be for hair color?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe somebody can tell us stories about cornrows and extensions and maybe fingernails and other crazy reasons why they pulled in for Mimi eyeshadow or whatever.
Mm-hmm. I hope my red lipstick doesn't offend anybody.
I don't think you care.
Or my fake nails. Or my dyed hair. I almost did put a braid in my hair, but I thought, let's not get too wild.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And we're not poking fun at the sister. I'm sure Paul had a valid point. What else did they have to do with their time? And some of the braids that if you go on YouTube, you can see some amazing braid work. Just flat out amazing braid work. And it does take hours and hours and hours to do. So I'm sure that it was a fully involved pastime for some people. Then maybe they needed to keep in balance. Transitioning to us guys, a beard fraction that goes beyond a Tesla stash, or God forbid a full beard, I mean, we get it. There were men worshiping followers of Russell that had beards, and they were like copying him, and that it was rumored that Rutherford reportedly couldn't grow a beard. But does that mean you go beyond the Bible and for decades ban them? I mean, is that really the answer? Jesus had a beard. Aaron had a beard. You can go along all through the scriptures about beards. How is this all of a sudden banned?
The 5th one is chaperones.
Now, it's a good idea to have a chaperone for multiple obvious reasons. But the fact of the matter is, any elder may latch onto this, making it a law, and then adding further stress to a difficult situation in the first place.
Not only that, I've repeatedly seen it been used like a weapon to keep people apart that they don't want together. All they have to do is put out that soft marking, threaten their privileges, and that couple no longer has that safety of a chaperone to turn to, and that puts them in danger of the exact sin they claim they are trying to protect them from. I mean, I've even seen couples where they say, "Oh no, we're not dating," and then they secretly meet so that everybody thinks they're not together, but they really are.
And then it's really putting them in danger of the sin there. And more than that, then they could disfellowship them for lying. Talk about laying a bird catcher trap.
The sixth point is schooling, your job, career.
You kind of wrapped it all into one. Now, to be clear, there are plenty of good reasons not to pursue higher education. The amount of staggering student loan debt alone illustrates that. And I'm sure there are many people that we can turn to that went to school for many years that are not using their education in their job.
At the same time, I'm sure we can point to higher education success stories. And likewise, there are success stories of those who have not taken higher education.
Right. Both ways. And Watchtower may go ahead and say that, a career choice is up to the Christian. But to prove the power of suggestion in the Watchtower, why is there such an inordinate amount of window washers among Jehovah's Witnesses? Before becoming a Jehovah's Witness, I assumed that, people, unless they had like an office in like the 24th story, I assumed that, business owners were washing their own windows. But when the congregation glory carrots are dangled and or threatened instead of just laying out all the facts, the pluses and the minuses, without manipulating the facts or propaganda, you've again crossed the line of an individual's conscience and what they're going to do for the rest of their life and how that's going to affect the rest of their life. And it totally goes beyond what's written.
The seventh point is where you're going to live.
Okay, here we go again with another thing they say is, that's your choice. But that's not going to keep the local Baals from harping on you non-stop to no end to tell you need to move to where the congregation is.
To make this point, we could point to ourselves. We moved 1,200 miles to have a ministry in unassigned territory because a Watchtower really pushed it at that time.
But once we got to the new territory, the pressure didn't end there. Never mind that we drove 70 miles one way and hadn't missed a single meeting, a single get-together, a request for assistance in helping anyone. At one time, we even drove down because an elder asked us to help move from one storage shed across to the other storage shed, like at a mini storage. The two garages were apart from each other. For some reason, they had to go from one to the other. And we drove down in a blizzard both ways.
To move a couple chairs.
I think we spent maybe 3 hours there. Driving, I think it was 6 because of the blizzard that we had to drive through.
Yep.
But he had to have it. But he had to have it done.
That day. Like, he couldn't wait until, earlier on a Tuesday, because we had a meeting on Tuesday, or, Sunday after the meeting. No, that just wasn't going to work.
So we never ever had any problem making it to any event or scheduled or not. Still, the elders relentlessly pressured us to move down to Devil's Lake, which thank goodness we rejected that. Because when the congregation dissolved a short time later, we would have been deserted because the elders and publishers following shortly thereafter sold their homes and fled the town like it was Sodom and Gomorrah. There are no witnesses that live in the town now of 10,000 people. But there was an elderly brother who lived locally there in a town about 15 minutes away, and they pretty much just abandoned him spiritually. One more instance of this, it was the same thing that happened here in Langdon when the congregation dissolved. They just abandoned the people here.
I don't know.
There are so many of them.
There's so many out here that they just left.
One more subheading of this, I'll just call it a subheading as opposed to an instance, because when Langdon's congregation dissolved, there used to be a congregation here, they abandoned these people here. And it's amazing. They expected them to move 70 miles. You need to come where we are. The world revolves around us. Jesus went to the people, but you know what? As soon as you're baptized, your world needs to revolve around us. And like I said, there's way too many stories to go into. We're talking about funerals that don't get done, memorial talks, elders putting the CO visit above memorial talks, a sister dying on our floor pretty much without the elders even giving a care. It gets a real in-depth story, so we'll just cut it off there. Unless you got something you want to say.
No. The 8th point is having children.
Now, this one they've laid off on recent years.
Probably because they know that's where most of the growth comes from.
Probably. But that doesn't stop the lingering idea that's perpetuated by the limiting of elevating positions, which is pretty much everything this organization's based off of, is, glory carrot hanging. So when couples that have children don't have that option available to them, that still is stigmatically pressure forced, since it's only open to people that don't have children.
And I was just going to relate a short little experience. It's not my experience, but my aunt, who raised me, she was brought into the organization in the 70s, just like a lot of people were, like before 75. And
stay alive till 75.
Yeah. And she was expressing to me at a convention she was at, I think she said it was in the late 70s or maybe early 80s. But the speaker from the platform said just point blank, now is not the time to be having children. And my aunt and uncle don't have children. All they had was me pretty much. So apparently they applied that in their life, and I know a lot of people did.
So let the young children come to me, but don't have any of them.
Point number 9 is date only in the Lord.
Yeah, we've got a personal stake in this one. This is yet another one of those ones that we get at a conscientious level. You don't want to be married to someone who doesn't believe the same things as you. That only makes sense and adds tension. The scripture says, marry only in the Lord. And if you're dating them, yeah, it is for the purpose, hopefully, of marriage for a Christian. But when you apply it as a law, it causes major problems. Because there are circumstances and situations. We went through hell with the elders over this issue. Yet literally, our first assembly after we got married, a girl we know, Ashley was her name, got baptized at that assembly. And within the next couple weeks, she got married to a brother in the Kingdom Hall. The hypocrites! And we're not saying that she shouldn't have been. As we said, there are circumstances and situations. Why is it that you think that you're going to apply law in one case and then not the other? Do you not understand what it means to be irritating to your children?
The 10th command is doctrines.
It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's generations, faithful slave, saying they're a mediator, dates of prophecy, or any other one of the doctrinal flip-flops or bad policies. If you don't accept any one of them, they will take it as poking the big Baal, and they will kill you. And if you don't just mindlessly follow their ring of untruth, how's that any different than the 11th day of Flipmas Watchtower gave to me 11 pipers piping, 10 Pharisees adding, 9 boxes checking, 8 saints a milking, 7 halls a selling, 666 dedication, 5 golden apostasies, 4 publishers, 3 judicial hands, 2 witnesses, and part truth in an everlasting life tree.